know, if they run a four-man front here, I think you and I would venture a guess that it's Daryl Jackson and Fabo, perhaps, depending on what they're expecting from the opposing team, and then off the edge would be Verse. And I mean, you don't suspect anybody is. Well, actually, I would ask you, who do you think is the other?
I mean, I know a lot of people are going to long for Patrick Payton to get the start, and he might. But I think they really like Derek McClendon too. And the thing about Derek McClendon that it should be valued is from, talking to the coaching staff. I mean, he's a guy he knows exactly what he's supposed to do. He's going to be in the right position. He knows his assignments. And I'm not saying Patrick Payton doesn't, but he doesn't have quite as much experience. That's going to be a big stage. You can imagine scenarios where they might bait a guy, especially a younger pass rusher who's looking to make a big play at a big stage. So I wouldn't be surprised if McClendon gets a start. I'd be a little bit surprised if Gilbert Edmonds starts at the other end, but he's had a good spring. They seem to like him as well. I don't know that he beats both those guys out. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's going to be, I mean, a lot of these guys are going to play a ton of snaps. I mean, obviously Briggs is going to play a ton, and
right.
They're going to move him in and around. It just depends on what they think the other team wants to do, what they're trying to establish. So I wouldn't get as hung up on which 3 or 4 guys are out there early on. I think they're going to play, I mean, they've got 5 that they love. Upwards of 7 to 8 are certainly going to play a lot in that situation. So I get really excited about that. I feel like Florida State has options. They haven't had options, Ira. They really haven't had a lot of options. They've had guys they had to play, but there weren't options where they could change personnel and say, okay, right now we're hell-bent on stopping the run. Okay, right now we are rushing the passer. We've got a third and obvious situation. We're going to substitute some guys out of here that are better suited and get some guys in here better suited to get after the passer.
Sorry to interrupt you, but that's a great point about not getting caught up on who the first 2 are, because I was talking to somebody the other day around the program, not one of the coaches, but somebody around the program, about the idea of, Daryl Jackson. From an NFL standpoint, we talked about before, he's probably the most prototypical. He's the guy when the scouts come in the preseason and they come in during the season, he's the guy they're all going to line up to go look at, because the measurables are off the charts. And, I think he's going to play really well. Fabian Lovett has a ton of experience. Braden Fisk has a ton of experience. They're really good players as well. I would assume those 3 will be the starters, but it wouldn't shock me if whoever doesn't start, it's not going to be because they're not worthy of being a Florida State starting defensive tackle. You just can't start them all. And then it'll be interesting to see how the game goes on, who gets more reps as the game goes on, because it may not be who starts, but who plays the most reps.
Has this spring practice session shocked you in their overall improvement? Well, I don't know that anybody shocked us, because we've only seen 2 non-padded practice and 1 padded practice. And you're going to have to see more reps live, good on good and all that, before you can have a huge impression. But I'll let you answer that question first, because I don't know that there's been a person where I said, oh my God, look at him.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think not a shock by any stretch. But I think looking at a couple of guys' bodies, Julian Armella is one. You loved him when he came in a year ago. You could see the frame and you said, okay, that guy. And then when we saw him in practice, the way he competed, didn't matter who he went up against. He gave it all his own. Even if he got whipped, he came back the next play and put his head right back in there and really competed. But seeing him now physically after a year in the program, he's starting to look like, a college offensive lineman. Same thing with Josh Farmer, continues to get bigger and stronger. So I don't know if it's because of their play, but just it's cool to see those guys so physically developed, because you can remember what they looked like just a year ago or a year and a half ago.
You can, and you make a good point. I'm glad you brought up Armella. He looks great, doesn't he? He looks like a huge guy, but a healthy huge. A guy that's going to be able to move, and he's put on size in the right way. Boy, I tell you what, it's so fun for us to sit here and have a conversation about the offense and defensive line looking athletic and big and deep, and you can go on and on with all those guys. Really, every year, guys, I'll say this, athletically, at least once a practice, once every other practice, one of us just notes for the hell of it that Travis Jay looks like a great athlete. But he did make a play the other day, and, it does seem like there's a chance. I don't want to go on and prattle on and on about that, but I'm rooting for that kid big time, man. I think it's a hell of a thing to kind of go through the ups and downs of his career so far here and not have the success that his athleticism would have projected him to have, and then stick through it and still be here. And you can tell he's liked by his teammates. I'm just rooting for him. I just want to put that out there because he's a hell of an athlete. If they can get anything out of him, if they get something out of that kind of an athlete, you could have a surprise on your hands in the secondary.
Yeah, and if you go back through his career, I mean, he came in, he had some academic issues when he first got in, and then played safety and probably was forced into action early, didn't play real well. Then they moved him to corner. That didn't go well. Then they moved him back to safety, and then he had to sit out last year. So it's just kind of been one thing after another. But, give him credit. I mean, he worked every day of practice last week. I mean, he had to eat it a little bit, man. He was on the scout team all last fall. That's not, he won state championships in high school in basketball and football. Mm-hmm. He's probably been the best athlete on the field every game he played his whole life. And here he is 4 years into his career in college, and he's working on the scout team. So that's got to be tough, man. And so, yeah, he's still here. He's working hard. But Coach Norvell, I thought, said the other day when he was asked about that play, it was a play, he came from behind, snatched the ball from a receiver or an offensive player and took the ball and forced a turnover. And Norvell, he didn't go overboard with the compliment. He was like, yeah, it was good to see. And he's got to do that. Like, it's got to be consistent. And it's got to be, we're not going to give it to you just because you've been a good guy to hang out and fight through adversity. You have to earn it. And we'll see if he can, man. I'm not putting all my chips on him because I think they've got some really good safeties. But I'm with you, man. It would be cool if he can contribute.
What did you guys think about the recruiting this weekend? Hearing/reading a lot of good things. That's from Joe Smith. Joe, I will say that there is a theme going on for Florida State recruiting right now. And that theme is that because they had proof of concept, we roll our eyes, we hear that phrase all the time, but it's true. Because they won 10 games, because they ended the season on a long win streak, swept their rivals in the state, beat the bejesus out of one of them, 45-3. I think that gained some momentum in the high school ranks. They've been killing it in the portal, but it's true. We're all wanting to see, how do you do now in the high school ranks? Because ultimately you do want to have a core group of guys that you sign and they go through your system and they're the depth. And then you find a portal guy here and there that fills in. And the quality of the player that is visiting Florida State right now has improved immensely. When you have a 5-star offensive lineman or a 4-star tackle or somebody like that say that they're very interested and then show up, then you know that you've already elevated what's possible. Now they got to sign them. They got to, get them to sign on the line, which is dotted, as they say. But they have a lot more of the upper crust quality player interested in what's happening at Florida State than they've had each of the last 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's been really cool to see. And that was, and I've been kind of a Mike Norvell, I would say, supporter. I believed in Mike Norvell for a while. I thought he was a good coach. But even I didn't know whether or not he could recruit at this level. When Jimbo Fisher came in, he brought in a bunch of hired guns as recruiters, guys who had recruited. Eddie Gran recruited guys at Auburn, those Dillard guys at Auburn 25 years ago. I mean, he brought in guys who had done it at the highest level in the SEC, so you knew they would be able to recruit, and they did. They did a really good job. Mike Norvell went a different way. He tried to kind of build the program first and then try to cash in. But we didn't know for sure whether he'd be able to do it. But that season, combined with what the players say, the way the players love this program and love this coaching staff so much, I think the players are hearing it from their teammates. Hakeem Williams is out recruiting kids from South Florida. All these players are communicating with the other recruits and kind of telling them how much they like it here. And it's all working well. And yeah, man, it is a completely different, and I have to edit all of the stories that we put up on recruiting. So I can tell you last year, it was a lot of 3-stars and maybe an occasional 4-star here or there. But, and you had a couple guys that showed interest because of different reasons, but the vast majority were not the highest level players. And this offseason's been completely different. And, now you have to sign them. But it's a whole lot better when you're getting them on campus than when you're not getting them on campus and hoping that maybe you try to sway them down the road.
Well, that's the first sign. The first sign is getting them here. Having them show up, the quality of the player that's showing up. Now you got a real shot. It's kind of like if you guys have ever, worked in some form of sales, you can bring a client into the room and hand them over to your sales staff. you got to get them in the room. You got to get these people across from the right people that, if they know what they're doing, can get them signed. And I think now they get the people in the room. They get the right people in the room. And we'll see. We'll judge accordingly whether or not they do a good job of signing said people. They have to.
I'm sorry. Last thing. I think in Norvell's pitch and Alex Atkins' pitch to the staff, kind of their sales pitch, it's not really a pitch, but what their message to recruits is, if you come here, just know,
prepare to work.
You're going to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. It's not going to be easy. Don't come here because you think you're going to be given anything. And that all, I think, resonates a lot better when you're 10-3 than it might have when you were 5-7. I always wondered how that was going over with when you were 3-6.
I got to work hard to get my ass kicked, and I cannot work hard and get my ass kicked. I mean,
I think it might be resonating better now.
Yeah, I think so.